This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
You do want to try to live life without regret, like in all areas. And I think, being in an intense caregiving situation, you get to that point quicker, I think, than most people who haven't been there yet. Is like, oh gosh, life is short. Let's, seize the day before it seizes us type of thing, and try to make the most of the moments. And it's not all, it's not all bad. The caregiving life is not all bad. There's a lot of joy in that life too.
This is the Heart of Hospice podcast with Helen Bauer. Elizabeth Miller of Happy Healthy Caregiver is talking with me today about remote caregiving and how her caregiving roles have changed over the years. Whether you're a family caregiver or an end-of-life professional, the Heart of Hospice is here to enhance your hospice experience by connecting you with information you can use about end-of-life care.
This episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast is sponsored by the Tree of Life Conference by International Doula Life Movement. Join IDLM at the Tree of Life Conference in San Antonio, Texas, November 1st through the 4th. The Tree of Life Conference is more than just workshops and seminars. It's an opportunity to connect, learn, and renew your commitment to compassionate care. Attendees will hear from expert speakers like end-of-life educator Barbara Carnes and Death Deck co-creator Lisa Paul. Visit internationaldoulalifemovement.com for more details. This episode is sponsored by Hospice Navigation Services. When you need information about hospice, Hospice Navigation Services can help. Our team of experienced hospice navigators is here to offer one-on-one consulting sessions by phone or video. You can book a complimentary 30-minute session when you need general information, or book a 60-minute session when you have in-depth questions or need to troubleshoot your current hospice care. It's your journey. Hospice Navigation Services can be your guide. Visit theheartofhospice.com to schedule your hospice navigation session today.
Well, this is my second visit with Elizabeth Miller on the show. She's one of my favorite people. She's become a friend. She is a family caregiver advocate, a speaker, author, a certified caregiving consultant, and a certified senior advisor. Elizabeth's personal experiences caring for her aging parents with chronic and then terminal illnesses, as well as for a sibling with developmental disabilities, inspired her to create Happy Healthy Caregiver, an LLC, back in 2015. Through her coaching services, speaking, her award-winning podcast, a book, and her online community, Elizabeth helps family caregivers infuse caregiving and self-care with their busy lives. She hosts the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast on the Whole Care Network. She is also the author of Just For You, a daily self-care journal. Elizabeth facilitates support groups for family caregivers as well, and she's an ally and a program guide for Brutally Beautiful, an organization which offers nature-based wellness retreats for family caregivers. So she is all about the caregiving life, and she has been almost all of her adult life. So in our conversation today, Elizabeth shared with me how she fulfilled her role as a remote caregiver when her parents needed care, and how she and her siblings helped each other, some from a distance and some hands-on. She admits that even in a large family like hers, because she's got multiple siblings, that not everyone has a caregiver. Not everyone has the personality or the gifts or the desire to be a caregiver. She talked about how they made that work among their particular group. She also shared the challenges of being caregiver at a distance, what we call a remote caregiver. The legacy that her parents left to Elizabeth and her siblings is very important, and you're going to hear her talk about that. She even shares some of the ways they found joy inside the caregiving experience, even after her mom had become bedbound and was pretty seriously ill and on hospice. So sit back, have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee with Elizabeth from Happy Healthy Caregiver. Elizabeth, it's so great to have you back on the show. Thanks for talking with me.
Thanks for having me, Helen.
This is like talking with an old friend, although we've never met in person.
That's so true. I know. That's weird, but I feel like I'll know you. Yeah.
It is.
We would just pick up and carry on.
All the time. So just so my listeners can get to know you a little bit, what is your go-to self-care habit right now?
It's a good question. It does change, right? Like depending on what you need. And the weather's been kind of colder here. It's not today. It's beautiful here in Atlanta today. But when it's colder, I find that I am hanging out more indoors. So I am hooked on reading right now, like just getting a cup of tea, and read a little bit this morning, actually, with a cup of coffee. I don't normally read fantasy, but my daughter read these 2 books that were she highly recommended one and gave them to me for a holiday present. So Fourth Wing is the first one. And I think the second one that I'm into is Iron Flame. And they're not little books, but I just like to escape right through a chapter of a book.
And what healthier way to do that than through a book? That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. It's super fun.
I like that. Okay, so we're going to dig into your story because you are the quintessential caregiver. You've done it all. You've seen it all. You're learning it all. You're still living it. And we want to talk about that. You've been a family caregiver for years now, for a long time. Tell me about your caregiving journey with your parents and your brother.
Okay. So, yeah, it's hard to put like an exact start date on caregiving for me. Like some people know, I became a caregiver on such and such day. Mine was more of a mudslide. Like I just kind of saw it happening with my parents' adult life and the needs that they started to have from a distance initially. And then things really kind of hit the fan in 2014 where both my parents were struggling at the same time. My husband's mother-in-law had cancer at the same time. We were both, raising kids, working full time. So classic sandwich generation caregivers, and really didn't necessarily call ourselves that. It wasn't until later that I learned that's what we were. We were drinking from the fire hose, trying to learn what was going on, mitigate, all the emotions of resentment and guilt on different layers of that. My dad passed away in 2015. His mom passed away in 2015. And then I became a primary caregiver for my mom when she moved to the Atlanta area from Florida. And I had a couple brothers nearby. So we're trying to figure out, how to share the care there. And then some sisters that lived in the Northeast that were trying to help remote and support with that. And we were kind of figuring it out as we went. And mom lived nearby in assisted living. We actually moved her a couple times. And then because of it wasn't quite a fit, she needed a high level of care, but not quite skilled nursing care. And my older sister had a life change. She took mom full time. So then I became a remote support caregiver when my mom lived in Michigan with my sister. And mom had many bonus years, I think, due to that tender, loving care of my sister, frankly, like being there. Was bedridden and on hospice the last 2 years of her life and passed away in the fall of 2020. So been a few years since post caregiving with my parents. It's actually the 10-year anniversary this year of my dad's death. And after my parents had deceased, we had to figure out, how to better support my brother. So I have a brother who's 60 years old, who was born with an intellectual and developmental disability. His name is Tom, and he's a snowbird. He lives half the year in Michigan with my sister and the nice months in Michigan. And he comes down here for the winter, lives with a brother that I have 3 brothers, 2 sisters, and lives with my brother, Tim. but they're kind of roommates, really. They don't do a lot together. And I fill the role of the everything else person when Tom is in Georgia. So I take him to doctor's appointments. He's recently wrecked his car. We've, had to kind of go through different things there. And then I'm also his like social entertainment person. Like we go play bingo, and he has a obsession with smoked chicken. So that's what I eat, a lot of smoked chicken with my brother.
So you're the cruise director.
Yeah, it's exhausting sometimes. So, it's a long day. I try to kind of bundle the Tom day all together. And so sometimes it's like, 11 in the morning till 11 at night. We're just kind of doing his grocery shopping, doing all of the things, and just kind of focused in on making sure his needs are met.
Well, you're also a business owner.
I am a business owner. Yes, I started Happy Healthy Caregiver to provide support and resources for family caregivers after the need that I saw that existed. It has kind of evolved and changed over the years. It's 9 years old this month, and I've been working it full time since 2021. So I'll never be bored. There's a lot of different things. And of course, there's many millions of family caregivers in the US alone that need help and support.
Yes, all in the same sort of boat. The boat may look a little bit different, but everybody's sailing the same kind of journey. And 55 million plus caregivers across the United States. So it's interesting, just in that synopsis that you gave, the different caregiving roles that you've had, the sandwich caregiver, the remote caregiver, the hands-on caregiver, the adult child for a parent caregiver, the adult for a sibling caregiver. I mean, that's a big list of caregiving roles. So I want to focus today on remote caregiving because it's something that's very common throughout the United States. We've become very mobile as a society. People don't stay down on the farm and raise their children, adjacent to their parents' property. They move away. And they build their own family unit in a different living space, miles and miles away. So I'm one of those folks. I didn't move very far. I'm only an hour and a half away from my mom. But my two siblings provide the hands-on care for my mother, who's 91, and I am a remote caregiver. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about what remote caregiving looks like for you when you were helping with your mom, and of course when Tom is in Michigan.
Yep.
During the nice weather months. What does remote caregiving look like for you?
Yeah, I think it's evolved and it's changed. At first, to your point, like at first I was a remote caregiver. My parents live 6 hours away in Florida. And so just kind of unpacking that a little bit, sometimes it was drop everything, we need you right now, and figuring out who was going to get there out of the siblings. And we kind of alternated and tag team depending on what people had going on in work and life. But sometimes that didn't necessarily work out. I miss, kids' birthdays and holidays and first days of school and things like that. So, that was kind of a bummer part of that. When I went down, as a remote caregiver and just kind of checking in on my parents every now and then, it's hard to kind of identify what's really going on from a distance. So you're really relying on some trusted people that are boots on the ground that have some FaceTime with my folks. And yet those people are, in this case, this woman's name was Cindy. She was like an amazing person that did a lot of personal care for my parents, errand running and things like that. And she felt like loyalty to my folks. So sometimes we didn't, and she's paid, right? So didn't necessarily feel like she could reach out with that. So sometimes it would, kind of shock us when we would go down there and see what was, and then we started increasing our visits and kind of trying to do them a little more proactive. Of course, we tried to get them to move. They moved away from Atlanta, my parents did, which, we were all here, it felt like, except for two of my sisters, but they wanted the dream of living on the ocean and in their condo. So they moved 6 hours away. We tried to get them back, lots of like mini intervention conversations. We knew that they needed more help and they were going to need more help, but they made it very clear that they were going to age in place is what I now know is they were going to live where they were going to live, whether we liked it or not. So when mom moved with my sister, I definitely got another taste of being a remote, in Atlanta, and moved up there. And that changed too. It was like, okay, how can I support them from, I'm 16-hour drive away and a half day at the minimum. They're kind of in a rural part of Michigan. So what that looked like was calling my mom, FaceTiming her frequently. So my sister wasn't the only one that kind of had to hear my mom's woes or same conversations over and over, and she could focus on something else. I would send her subscription boxes. So it varied over the years. Sometimes it was ones geared toward older adults where she would get like a monthly thing in the mail, and we would do unboxings over FaceTime. And then as her mobility needs changed, we did like snacks, and we would go through the snacks, and she would pick out the ones that she liked, and she used to put the rest of them in a basket for the hospice workers or the professional caregivers or the clergy people that were coming in the house, to kind of still have that hospitality of the way that she could offer them something. It was definitely more of a role of supporting my sister, not necessarily my mom, but just energizing her by being that person that she could talk to and vent with, send her little texts, and memos of things to think about. I made her the caregiver jar, which I talk about on my podcast. And it's got like 150 quotes and sayings in it that I felt spoke to me as a family caregiver that I had collected. So I made that for my sister. And then when I would go up to visit, I would pack it with more. I would just stuff it, without her looking. So she would never really run out of little things to kind of motivate her. I'm thinking of other things, like when I was the primary caregiver, how my siblings supported me from a distance was also critical. And we had to kind of try on different things and figure out what worked. But a little bit of the things that worked were, one of my sisters that lived in DC took all the bills from my mom. So all the mail essentially went to my sister's address so that she could open it, filter through it, pay the bills. And then my other sister, older sister Susie, at the time when I was primary caregiver, she did all of Tom's stuff, like all his SSDI, Medicaid, making sure he's situated and his car is good. And so kind of just like owning all of that for Tom. And then that allowed me to really put my focus on boots on the ground there for my mom's care. And my brother was here. I had two brothers here. We all have kind of, well, some of us, not all of us, but we all usually have a family member that doesn't quite help to the level that we hope that they would. And
Sure.
I have a brother like that. My oldest brother is not a caregiver. He's not helpful. He's sometimes can make things worse with everybody that's needed care. And so I call him consistent in that. And then my other brother, Tim, you have to be very specific about help that I needed. So I would just tell him, hey, could you go grocery shopping for mom? Could you do this or that, the other? Other things, remote wise that we would do. I would consider even my brother down here in Georgia, like I still feel like a remote caregiver because he's an hour away from me. So it's not like I can just drop over and go quickly. A lot of it's communication, like checking in, see what's going on. He can kind of get in trouble on social media, and, we have to kind of watch things there that he doesn't get taken advantage of. So the more you talk to him, the more you learn about what's really going on. Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. It's been a lot of trial and error, though, to see what can be done from a distance. Researching, I would add that too. Like we took vacations together sometimes. And so if I could take that from my sister, like when she was helping mom, we were planning a trip to go to the beach together that was in an unknown area, and kind of investigating what that could look like. Sometimes it's researching medications or finding doctors and support in the area. Lately, it's like they've been helping by looking for a car for my brother. So it doesn't necessarily have to be someone here local that's looking for that. They found one in New Jersey that is exactly like the one that he already had, which reduces the risk of future accidents, and, coordinated getting that shipped down. So that makes it easier on us when those things from a distance.
So remote caregiving really varies It's very individualized, and there are a million different forms it can take. I think the research thing, people don't realize how valuable that is, because if you wanted to have groceries delivered to someone and they're in another town, you find which grocery store, you put the address, you can set up delivery and everything online if you have their grocery list. In fact, my brother, who lives maybe 20 minutes from my mom, sets up her grocery delivery because she can't get in and out of the grocery store anymore. And it's so much easier for him to have her household groceries delivered. You know, he just orders it for her online. Super easy. But yeah, remote caregiving, I think, has so much value, and people don't realize. The other thing that struck me about what you said is a lot of the support you did for your sister in Michigan was not straight on support for your mom, not directly supporting your mother, but supporting your sister as she was caregiving for your mom. You're basically caring for the caregiver.
Yeah, I would say I'm actually better at that than I am a hands-on caregiver. I feel like, you know, being a caregiver cheerleader, just making sure that my sister was carving out time for herself and kind of being that accountability about that was really a strength. You know, like, just if I talked to her, I'd be like, hey, have you know, been able to get a shower? You know, when's the last time you've been outside? You know, just things like that, because it can be super isolating. Yeah. Particularly in rural Michigan, and especially in the winter. And then I think the other thing that really worked for us there too, you know, there was a little bit of frustration about not being able to go and physically help my sister when she had mom in Michigan. You know, she would kind of get to a boiling point sometimes, and then, oh my gosh, you know, hair's on fire, and it's not easy to get there. So what we found kind of worked is that if my little sister and I would alternate visits, of course, we all wanted to be together at the same time, but it doesn't necessarily work that way. We know that we needed to kind of spread out, you know, and spread out our visits. And so we manage expectations by really saying, you know, hey, you know, Susie, I can come and help you with mom. Sometimes solo, I would do it. Sometimes my sister would still be there, but I would set the expectation that I could get there once a quarter. That was what I could afford. That's what I could take off from work. And then we could kind of, so then she could kind of see that, okay, relief is coming, you know. And then it'd be like, when I was there, we talk about the next quarter and when would be a good time to visit. And there were times we had to adjust, right? Like, there were a handful of times where we thought the last time was the last, like in that 6-year time frame. Every time I saw my mom, I thought she was going to die, you know, before I'd see her the next time. I mean, frankly, probably the last 10 years of her life were like that. And it almost became the joke, like with our family, is like, you say that every time, Mom, she's still here, you know, type of thing. But there would be emergencies where we'd have to go up and drop everything. But in general, that really helped to align on when the visits were going to be.
What I hear you saying is being proactive and being organized are two,
yes.
Talk about superpowers that somebody in that caregiving group needs to have. Somebody needs to be proactive. Somebody needs to be organizing and setting things up.
You know, I worked in corporate jobs, you know, long time, and someone's got to have that manager kind of role on things.
Right.
And that's usually as the primary caregiver. It's emotional. It's not exactly like a work project, right? But you're trying to evaluate different people's strengths and weaknesses. You're trying to identify where there's gaps in things getting done or in mom's care, and filling those with the right roles. So, you know, I hate to sound cold and businesslike about it, but there is this task management part of it. And of course, it's very emotional at the same time, which makes it more complex.
Yeah, but I don't think you can leave that piece out. You have to factor that in. Because you're talking about emotional, physical, spiritual wear and tear on a primary hands-on caregiver. That takes its toll, especially for somebody who's got a serious illness. So I think there's a both and. There's a business component to it. Yeah, a caregiver is going about the business of taking care of someone, in addition to dealing with their physical fatigue, their grief, their overwhelm that they might be feeling. You can't run it like it's just a business, like a work project. You have to factor that other stuff in.
Exactly.
This conversation is so good, but we're going to take a quick break. Hang on for more great content.
In a world where compassion and community are needed more than ever, the International Doula Life Movement presents the Tree of Life Conference. Join IDLM November 1st through the 4th in San Antonio, Texas for an extraordinary experience in end-of-life care. The Tree of Life Conference is not just an event, it's a movement towards making a positive impact. Attendees will hear from expert speakers, including award-winning end-of-life educator Barbara Carnes, Lisa Paul of the Death Deck, Brenda Kazire and Nancy Hireman of Odonata Care, and end-of-life advocate Helen Bauer, host of the Heart of Hospice podcast. The Tree of Life Conference is more than just workshops and seminars. It's an opportunity to connect, learn, and renew your commitment to compassionate care. This event is made possible by the team at International Doula Life Movement, who believes in the power of empathy, education, and making a difference in the world. Don't miss out on this transformative experience. Join IDLM at the Tree of Life Conference in San Antonio, Texas from November 1st through the 4th. Visit internationaldoulalifemovement.com for more details and secure your spot today. When you need information about hospice for yourself or someone you care about, Hospice Navigation Services can help you navigate hospice care for the best end-of-life experience possible. If you're walking this journey and need the help of an experienced guide, Hospice Navigation Services is here for you. We understand the importance of having a guide who can provide personalized, unbiased support. Our team of experienced hospice navigators is here to offer one-on-one consulting sessions by phone or video. Whether you need information about how to start hospice services or guidance for your current services, we're here to listen and provide compassionate support every step of the way. You can book a 30-minute free navigation session with an experienced hospice navigator when you need general information to start your hospice experience. Book a 60-minute hospice navigation session when you have in-depth questions about hospice or need to troubleshoot your current hospice care. You deserve compassionate support and guidance for your end-of-life care. It's your journey. Hospice Navigation Services can be your guide. Visit theheartofhospice.com to schedule your hospice navigation session today.
Your caregiving role has changed a lot since your mother passed away. And it has been an identity that you've had, caring for your both parents and then just for your mother through so many years. And now you're caregiving for your brother. How has the role change that you've had as a caregiver affected you? It's sort of an identity, an identity change. How has that affected you through the years?
Yeah. I mean, I think I felt it mostly, that identity shift, when I stopped being the primary caregiver and became the support caregiver for my mom. Like, I felt it heavier then, that role shift, even to the point where I was like, can I still do my business? Like, I'm not really caregiving right now. Like, I didn't feel like I was, but I was, and I could still, of course, talk about it and still have expertise in that area. And then after, I think there was so much anticipatory grief about mom that it wasn't as hard for me necessarily when she passed as it was for my sister. Now, my sister had been like 4 years life, 100% devoted to caring for my mother. And so then it became really about like supporting her through that transition and talking about like Susie. We called it Susie 3.0 because Susie 2.0 was when Susie got divorced from her husband and had to reinvent herself. Then after mom died, it was like, okay, Susie 3.0, like let's, and my role kind of was like helping to support her and out what that looked like. And so, she's an oil painter. And so we talked about like getting her, she got more involved in that. She started, doing more clubs. She joined a book club, like just really advocating for her to kind of put her life back to get and travel and go see people and kind of make that list of things that she wished she would do. So I kind of felt like that was my primary role after my mom died, was like, okay, let's not fix Susie, but let's support her to see what can develop there. Because I had really leaned in, even after losing the primary caregiving role for mom, like I really leaned into my business at that point. I was like, okay, I'm still a caregiver for caregivers. So like I'm gonna lean into that more and do more support and get involved. And that's kind of where that's stuck ever since. I also think like I have a huge family, not just siblings, but a lot of extended family. So I was also able to help during these years. My cousin Megan was a solo young caregiver for both of her parents, so my Aunt Chris and my Uncle Terry, and we were of each other. After my mom passed away, my aunt passed away, and my uncle passed away. And so helping her with that as a solo caregiver, a young solo caregiver in her 30s, also going through their house of all their generational clutter of all what that was like. And it just really informed, oh my gosh, what do I want to do to help prepare my kids better, so that this isn't happening like what's happening to my cousin Megan. And I'm just glad that we were able to be there for her and help her with those pieces of what was going on. So yeah, I think you don't get to push pause and kind of just process it all. It's just kind of into the not into the next thing, so to speak. But this year, like post caregiving, and like it was like, oh wow, it's gonna be 10 years that my dad passed away. So I had this like mini project that I want to do, which he wrote a book. Both my parents were authors, self-published author. And my dad wrote a book called Drops in the Bucket. And it was like his thoughts and his musings about life, like just little things that have stuck with me. And I quote him and drops like in my daily life decision making. So, but he wrote another book to this called to extend, I think it was like 50 drops in the first book, and he wrote like another 50 drops, and we have it, but we've never done anything with it. So I kind of want to do this 10-year, I don't know, death anniversary. It sounds kind of gross, but just a way to kind of respect that work and kind of share it with the rest of the family.
Yeah, deathversary.
The lost, that's what we're going to call it.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, it's a way of
deathversary. Is that it?
Yeah, a deathversary. But I think that creates meaning. I was going to ask you, what does that 10-year anniversary mean for you as a caregiver? I mean, that was a huge milestone. You lost your first parent.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard. It's been hard. There are things definitely that like Dad was the person who like knew the ins and outs of all my business stuff, like my day job. He never knew entrepreneurial any of us. He didn't know that I started my business. He didn't know my sister started her own like media PR business in DC, and of course my older sister with her art and stuff. And so he would have been loving that we were like all doing this entrepreneurial stuff now, because big believer in that. Worked for himself toward the end of his life. So, we talk a lot like sisters, and we're like, what would Dad do? What would, what's your guidance? Put your dad hat on, and what would he say? So I think that's kind of we talk a lot about that. And we do for his birthdays and his deathversaries over the years, we do kind of respect those days as far as like, we send family group texts. We might share old pictures of Dad. We might wear his favorite color. My dad had a favorite color more so than my mom's. Like his was Kelly green, so that might be something. So yeah, what does it mean? I'll have to ponder on that a little more, Helen. It's something.
Yeah, but it sounds like your family is carrying your dad's legacy. That you and your siblings are carrying your dad's legacy forward. That's an awesome way to honor him.
Yeah. No, I was thinking like when we quote him a lot, and my dad in particular, and my mom too, but like my mom's legacy lives on in us in different ways. Like she's definitely like the writer part, the reading part, like that's all my mom's influences. Love for for food, especially. Whereas dad is more like, I don't know, more maybe with decision making and negotiation, like, never be afraid to ask for too much or offer too little, or life is a contact sport, like certain things, like just, I say them all the time. I just think of that. Yeah. So kind of keep alive. And I think it's important to keep talking about them.
It's a way of keeping them with you. I like that. So when you think back about all these years, 10 years of caregiving, and of course, Tom, so as an adult, you've been a caregiver pretty much all your adult life in one way or the other. If you could go back and change things in the ways that you cared for your parents, what would you do differently?
I think just maybe some of it's more mindset than actual, like, what would I physically do differently? It's just, passing on the mindset to people that, grief comes in many, as caregivers, we're grieving the life we had or thought we would have.
Right.
And I think that the understanding that they are also grieving the life that they thought that they were going to have, or the physical health that they thought they would have in their older adult life. So just, I think more like thinking about what it's like in their shoes, letting go of expectations. And I think, in general, caregiving is a big lesson in learning how to let go of control, like serious control issues.
Yeah.
So maybe kind of getting to those points quicker, I wish came a little sooner. I think we did learn a lot, though. Like, Dad's last bits of life were like very quick in hospice for the last week of his life, but the month of just quick decline. And we learned a lot, right? From like, oh my gosh, like we thought that my mom would pass away. You kind of have these morbid conversations among your siblings sometimes. Like,
Sure.
what do you think's going to happen? Dad would be all right, kind of on his own. Of course, he would miss her, but he would kind of be able to kind of manage and take care of stuff. Well, that's it. So it's really a wake up call, I think, of that, and kind of using that first loss to inform how we were going to come together and better care for Mom. So we implemented some of those things, like the 5 wishes, and just having more conversations about death and dying, and then getting our own house in order, for all of us, so that
Sure.
those types of things wouldn't happen, to something with our kids. So you live and you learn. But I also tell caregivers, and I try to take this advice myself, is like, you make the best decisions with the information you have at the time. So give yourself grace that, you were smart. You're a smart person, and surely you did that. You made the best decisions with the information at the time.
Yeah, that's one of the things I when I counsel with people in a hospice navigation session, or I'm talking to a caregiver, this looking back with regret, I always tell people, you made the best decision right then with what you knew at the time, because that regret is just another source of grief for people who are caregiving, and you can't change it. And in the moment, if you were acting in the best interest of the person you're taking care of, someone you care about, that you love, it's not a bad decision. It's the right decision in that moment.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Good advice, Helen. And like, you do want to try to live life without regret, like in all areas. And I think, being in an intense caregiving situation, you get to that point quicker, I think, than most people who haven't been there yet. Is like, oh gosh, life is short. Let's, seize the day before it seizes us, type of thing, and try to make the most of the moments. And it's not all, it's not all bad. The caregiving life is not all bad. There's a lot of joy in that life too. And so really, I kind of see that joy gets even more shiny in those rough years, because you celebrate it, because doesn't happen as often, maybe.
That's true. Elizabeth, tell me about a time that you experienced a moment of joy like that with your mom.
Okay, we had a lot of laughs, like like, my kids don't think I'm funny, but my mom thought I was hilarious. So
Our kids never think we're funny.
no, they never think we don't. So, I mean, it was a challenge to like make my mom have a lot of joy, particularly the last 2 years when she was literally in a bed, like a hospital bed in the family room. So, but we had a lot of laughs. So we would just crank up a tune. I love that song, "This Is Me" from the Greatest Showman.
Oh, yeah.
So we would crank up the tune, and like if my younger sister and I were there together on those rare moments, maybe for a holiday or something, we would do like a dance routine for my mom, and we could have her like in fits and laughs. So those kinds of memories stick out. Of course, we're a big game family, so we played a lot of games, and we just would have to get creative about the games that we could play in like a bedside table. Like, and so what would that look like? And trying new things. Like we played Play-Doh, and my mom was pretty willing to go with it. It wasn't like, because she didn't have a lot of cognitive decline till the very end. And, I didn't know if it'd be insulting to her, but I just was like, put it out and be like, Mom, let's just have some fun with this. And so a lot of coffee talks. She wrote a book about, it's actually a grief-related book. My mom's first husband died of leukemia, and she had my 4 older siblings are technically half brothers and sisters, but I don't know any better. And they were all under the age of 10. So it doesn't feel like a blended family. But my mom was a caregiver, right? So she went through that whole thing with her husband passing, and wrote a book called The Wadoodles at Hollow Lake, which was kind of based on the lake where my mom lived at Hubbard Lake. And she wrote her books, a series of them, about animals having like real life problems, because she was trying to explain death and dying to her children at that time. Yeah. So The Wadoodles of Hollow Lake is like a series that she wrote before there were death and dying books for kids, but a chapter book, But my mom's eyesight started going toward the end of her life. So we started reading her book to her, which was kind of cool.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Those are joyful moments. What a nice example. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Elizabeth, happy, healthy caregiver that you are. How can my listeners connect with you, tap into your resources, because you have a ton of resources. You're really active online and in social media. How can people connect with you and also work with you?
I would love that. So yeah, I kind of have 2 avenues. Like I definitely Happy Healthy Caregiver, the content on social, the podcast and things directly supports family caregivers. It's important for me to do that, like mostly free, right? There are a couple things, the journal, the self-care course, and some coaching that can cost money. But then how I primarily then work with businesses is a great way to kind of scale support and resources to family caregivers. So I do a lot of speaking for companies and organizations about caregiving and self-care. In particular is what I like to chat about: family dynamics, setting boundaries, and so forth. But the best way to find out about all of that is to go to the website, happyhealthycaregiver.com, and you can kind of find and navigate to the different resources there.
Awesome. I'll have a link in the show notes. People can go in and find your stuff and connect with you. Elizabeth, thanks for taking time with me today. It's so great to talk to you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for stirring up all these stories and kind of making me just appreciate them again.
Be sure to catch the next episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast. You can find more episodes on theheartofhospice.com. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. You can connect with the Heart of Hospice on Facebook and Instagram, and send your questions or comments by email to helen@theheartofhospice.com. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.